The sandstorm had just passed when Jalen's ship landed on the edge of a ruined alien village. His boots sank slightly into the cracked red soil as he stepped out, scanning the quiet with sharp eyes. The place was too still, too silent, no voices. No animals, no movement. His hand stayed close to his sidearm, ready, just in case. Tall, broken houses made of stone and bone surrounded him. Signs of life were everywhere: broken toys, hanging laundry, and shattered food pots. But there were no bodies, no blood, just absence. It felt like everyone had vanished in a single breath. Yalen took a few cautious steps forward, his boots crunching softly. He bent down to examine the ground-deep claw marks, long and sharp, like something huge had landed. And then he noticed the feathers, dark blue, longer than his arm, scattered across the ground like warnings. Suddenly, something moved behind a broken pillar. Yalen spun, weapon ready, but what stepped out made him lower his gun. It was a child, a little alien girl, thin, dirty, shaking. Her skin was pale violet, and her eyes were the color of silver stars. She stared at him, lips trembling, arms clutching. Something tight to her chest, a stuffed toy, torn and burned. Yalen softened his voice. "Hey, I'm not here to hurt you." The girl didn't speak, but her eyes filled with tears. She took one slow step forward and then collapsed. Yalen rushed over and caught her before she hit the ground. Her skin was cold, and her breath came in weak gasps. He pulled out a water flask and held it to her lips. She drank greedily, coughing, but didn't stop. After a few sips, she looked up and whispered, "Please, human, help. My mom is trapped." Her voice was rough, dry-like. She hadn't spoken in days. Yalen narrowed his eyes. "Trapped where?" She raised her trembling hand and pointed to the sky. "In the nest," she whispered. The sky hunters took her. Yalen had heard strange stories in space stations, tales of flying beasts, creatures that hunted from the clouds, grabbing villagers and livestock alike. He never believed them, but now, looking at this broken village and the terror in the girl's eyes, he wasn't so sure anymore. "What's your name?" he asked, helping her sit up. "Luma," she whispered, voice full of pain. "I hid. She told me to hide when they came, and your mom. She fought them. They took her anyway." Just then, a feather drifted from above, slow and twisting in the wind. It landed near Jalen's boot, bigger than the last ones, and blood-stained. He looked up, but the sky was empty, just drifting clouds and blue. Something moved in the clouds, far above, a shadow too big to be a bird. Luma grabbed his arm tightly. "Please, don't leave me." "I won't," Yalen said, though part of him wanted to run back to his ship and fly far away. But something about this girl, about her silver eyes, made him stay. He wrapped her in a blanket from his pack and gave her a protein bar. As she ate, he walked through the ruins, trying to understand what happened here. Claw marks were everywhere, walls, roofs, even on solar panels. Whatever came through, it didn't just hunt, it hunted smart. He found a data pad in one of the homes. A recording played the last message of a villager. "They come when the sky turns green. They come for blood. They take the strong." Then static. Yalen returned to Luma, who is now sitting up, staring at the clouds. "I saw them," she said. "Big wings, loud screams. My mom hit one with fire. Fire. She used a torch. It screamed and flew away. But the others grabbed her." Yalen looked at the mountains in the distance, their tops hidden by clouds. "Is that where the nest is?" Luma nodded. "Yes. They live up there." "No one goes. Then we'll go," he said, surprising himself. She looked at him with wide, hopeful eyes. "You'd help me?" "I said I wouldn't leave you," he said, standing, "and I keep my word." From the clouds above, a faint screech echoed, long, sharp, hungry. Luma shivered and leaned closer to him. Yalen didn't flinch. He simply looked to the sky. And Nuv's journey was only beginning. Luma walked beside Yalan, her small hand gripping the side strap of his backpack. The wind howled softly across the barren hills as they left the ruined village behind. Yalan had marked the nest's direction using his ship's scanner, but the clouds were already moving in, big and gray. They swirled around the tall mountain that pierced the sky like a knife. "That's where they live," Luma said quietly. Pointing ahead, her voice was low, but her fear was louder than words. Yalan glanced at her. "What's it like? The nest?" She didn't answer for a moment, then said, "Dark, full of bones, and eyes that never blink." They walked through dry grass and broken paths. Yalan checked his surroundings constantly. Twice, he saw shapes in the sky, large, winged shadows, circling far above. Each time, he moved Luma under cover behind boulders, under trees. The sky hunters didn't attack, but they watched. "Why did they come for your village?" Yalan asked. Luma clutched her torn toy closer. "They come when there's no more fear. When people forget they exist." He frowned. "That doesn't make sense." "It doesn't have to," she whispered. "They're monsters." As the sun dipped lower, they found shelter in a small cave. Yalan set up a small fire using his survival kit. Luma curled up in a blanket near the flame, her eyes wide. He cooked a heat-packed meal and handed her half. She chewed slowly, then asked, "Why are you helping me?" Yalan stirred his food, thinking, "Because you asked," he said finally. "No one else would have." She replied, staring into the fire. Not even the other traders. Yalan didn't speak. But he knew she was right. Many humans avoided getting involved in alien matters, especially ones involving danger. But he wasn't like the others, not anymore. That night, the sky trembled. They heard distant screeches, loud, sharp, filled with fury. The fire flickered, and Luma pressed closer to Yalan. "They're fighting up there," she said. "Sky hunters sometimes kill each other for food." Yalan didn't sleep much. He kept watch. Staring up at the sky through the cave's narrow entrance, a feather floated down again, this one red-tipped. He caught it in his hand, frowning. "What kind of creature bleeds feathers?" he whispered to himself. In the morning, they began to climb. The mountain path was narrow, with sharp rocks and sudden drops. Luma moved carefully, her small feet steady despite her fear. She had done this before. Yalan realized maybe not all the way, but she had tried. "How far did you get last time?" he asked as they climbed past the river bend. She said, pointing ahead, "But I fell. My mom carried me down." They reached the river bend in the afternoon where cold mist rolled off a narrow cliffside stream. Yalan noticed bones lying nearby, not animal bones, humanoid. Luma turned her head away. "They tried to," she whispered, "but the hunters were faster." Yol kneeled by the bones, found a rusted weapon beside them. Scorched claw marks on the stone told the story. Whoever they were, they died fighting. He stood and looked at Luma. "We'll be smarter." They moved again, climbing higher as wind picked up. The air grew colder, thinner. Yalan pulled a thermal wrap over Luma's shoulders. She didn't complain. She just kept moving, her eyes fixed ahead. As evening neared, clouds began to swirl low around them. Yalan turned on his motion sensor static. Then a loud ping. He froze. Something big moved above them, circling. He pulled Luma close and ducked behind a rock shelf. A huge shadow passed overhead, slow. Heavy wing beats echoed through the mountain. The sky hunter, this one wasn't like the scout from before, was larger. With torn wings and a scarred beak, it landed nearby, claws scraping the rock, sniffing the air. Luma held her breath, her tiny hands shaking. Yalan slowly reached for his pulse blade, but didn't move further. The beast sniffed once, then tilted its head. Suddenly, it opened its mouth and let out a horrible screech, then flew off, vanishing into the clouds again. Silence returned. Luma collapsed into Jalen's arms. Trembling, he held her tight, whispering, "It didn't see us. We're okay. I thought we were dead," she cried softly. "Not today," Yulin said, though his heart was still racing. They found a small outcropping to rest for the night. From there, they could see the mountain peak. Nest's edge, a twisted shape of bones and branches, black against the clouds. "We're close," Luma said, eyes wide. "Closer than anyone's been in years," Yulin added, and as night fell, lightning flashed in the distance, briefly lighting the sky. In that light, Yulin saw something move on the edge of the nest. Something alive, and he knew Luma's mother might still be there. The wind cried through the rocks as morning came. Yulin woke to the cold air biting his face and a heavy silence around him. Luma was still curled in the blanket, her small body rising and falling slowly, but her eyes were open, staring at the sky. "They were here again," she said softly. Yulin sat up, rubbing his eyes. "What do you mean?" She pointed toward the distant nest. "I heard them whispering." Yulin frowned. "Whispering?" She nodded, "Not with mouths. In the wind." At first, Yulin thought it was just fear playing tricks on her. But then he paused. The air really did carry something strange, faint sounds like voices echoing in a storm, or maybe screams. They packed up and climbed higher. The path grew steeper and the air thinner. Even Jalen's strong legs were beginning to ache, but Luma pressed on without complaint. Her eyes locked on the mountain's peak as they rounded a curve. A strange stench filled the air. Yulin covered his nose. "What is that?" Luma didn't answer, just pointed again, this time at a ledge with black stains and feathers. The rocks were cracked there, clawed deep. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept past them. A feather floated down, huge, black with glowing red edges. Yulin grabbed it mid-air. "This one's still warm," he said, alarmed. "They're hunting," Luma whispered. "We're close to their feeding zone." Yulin scanned the area and saw something shiny in the rocks. He moved closer and found a torn belt with a metal tag, part of a uniform. "Someone else tried to reach the nest," he said, "but the rest of the body was gone." "Maybe they got caught," Luma said softly. "Or maybe worse." Her voice trembled at the last word. She looked up at him. "Will you leave if it gets too dangerous?" Yulin shook his head. "Not without your mother." They continued their climb. At one point, the path narrowed so much only one of them could walk at a time. Yulin went first, holding out his hand to guide her. Below them, a deep drop vanished into clouds. One wrong step, and they'd fall. Halfway across, a loud screech rang out. A shadow shot through the mist above them, fast, sharp, deadly. "Hold on," Yulin shouted as wind slammed against the cliff. Luma dropped to her knees and grabbed the rock tightly. The shadow passed again, but didn't attack. It was watching, testing. "Why don't they just take us?" Yulin asked, breathing hard. "They like fear," Luma said. "They taste it." Yulin felt a chill crawl up his spine. "What are these things?" "Us," he whispered. "Not animals," she replied. "Not fully." Finally, they reached a wide ledge where the wind calmed. Yulin collapsed for a moment. Catching his breath, Luma walked slowly toward the edge and stared out at the clouds. Her face changed, shock, then hope, then tears. "What is it?" Yulin asked as he stood. She pointed. "That scarf. It's my mom's." Tied to a broken spear near the rocks was a torn red scarf. Yulin approached it carefully. There were feathers stuck in the rock nearby. Blood droplets too. "She fought them here," Luma said. Touching the scarf gently, she made it this far. Suddenly, something rustled in the wind again. Yulin turned fast, blade ready, but saw nothing. Then he heard it, a voice. "Help." It was soft, barely more than a whisper, but it wasn't Luma, and it wasn't the wind. "Did you hear that?" Yulin asked, heart racing. Luma nodded slowly. "That's her. How do you know?" "I just do." They followed the sound, into a narrow rock tunnel dark and tight. The walls were damp, and strange symbols were scratched into the stone. They mark places like this, Luma explained. To keep others away. Did it work? Yalin asked. She shook her head. Not this time. Inside the tunnel, they found a small chamber. Broken bones lined the floor. But there was something else. A small nest, made of branches and feathers, and inside, something wrapped in cloth. Breathing, Yalin rushed forward, ready to defend, but as he lifted the cloth, he saw it was not her mother. It was a young alien, barely older than Luma, eyes wild, one arm broken, skin covered in scratches. She's one of the others. Luma said in shock. She went missing months ago. The girl moaned, "They keep us. Some alive." For eggs, Yalin felt his stomach twist. "What do you mean eggs?" "They feed us to the young," she whispered. "Alive." Luma gasped and stepped back, tears running down her face. Yalin gently lifted the girl. "We can't leave her here." As they turned to exit the tunnel, another screech rang through the wind. Louder this time, closer, "They know," Luma said. Shaking, "They always know." Outside, the sky darkened as clouds swirled faster. A storm was coming, and with it, the hunters. But Yalin stood firm, blade in one hand, the girl in the other, and Luma beside him, silver eyes shining with fear and hope. Yalin moved quickly, carrying the injured alien girl in his arms. Luma walked beside him, quiet but alert, eyes darting to every shadow. The wind had picked up, howling through the rocks like a warning. Above them, the clouds spun slowly, unnaturally, as if something was watching through them. They had left the narrow tunnel and were climbing again. Every step felt heavier, not just from the weight of the girl, but from the fear pressing down on them. "The path ends near the top," Luma said, pointing ahead. "That's where the nest begins." Yalin looked at the twisted cliff walls in the distance, sharp, jagged, blackened with fire. The air smelled like metal and rot. "Why does it stink like that?" he asked. Luma whispered. "They eat everything, even their dead." They stopped briefly under a stone arch to rest. Yalin gave water to the injured girl, who sipped weakly, eyes barely open. "What's your name?" he asked her softly. "Syra," she whispered, voice cracked and dry. "They fed my brother to the younglings." Luma looked away, wiping her tears. Yulon placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I'll get you both out," she nodded. But her face was pale, lips trembling. The ground beneath them changed, no longer rough rock, but smooth and glossy. Claw marks covered it. Deep grooves carved into the surface like some massive creature had sharpened its talons. "Here, this is where they land," Luma said, voice tight, to drop food. A distant screech echoed again, long and sharp. It rolled through the mountains like thunder, followed by a second sound, deeper, heavier. "That's the Alpha," Luma whispered, "the biggest one." Suddenly, a shadow darted across the sky, fast and low. "Move," Yalin shouted, pulling Luma and Syra under a rock overhang. A sky hunter dove, its massive wings spreading wide, claws flashing, but they were hidden. Just in time, the creature passed over. Frustrated, screeching in rage, dust rained from above. As its wings whipped the mountain, Luma clung to Yolon, Syra shaking in his arms. "It's searching," he said. "But it doesn't know where we are." "Not yet," Luma replied, "but it will." They pushed forward again, climbing faster as they neared the cliff's upper edge. The world opened before them. The nest, it stretched like a broken ship, crashed into the mountain, huge bones shaped into cages. Branches woven with skin and feathers, dark, disgusting, and alive. The air was thick with the smell of rot, and buzzing flies circled overhead. Bones of every shape and size were scattered. Some still had cloth, others had armor. All were chewed. Jalen's face tightened. "This is a graveyard," he muttered. Luma's silver eyes locked on a cage near the far end. Her voice cracked. "That's hers." "That's my mom's cage." Even from a distance, Yolan could see movement weak. "Slow, but alive. She's breathing," he said. Heart racing, Luma nearly collapsed. Tears streaming. She's still alive, but they weren't alone. The Alpha Sky Hunter landed on a ledge above the nest, its massive wings folding in. Its body was covered in scars, and its eyes glowed bright orange. It let out a low growl that vibrated through the ground. Then it sniffed the air, slowly turning its head toward them. Yalan whispered, "Stay behind me." He set Syra down gently behind a broken rib bone and stepped forward. The Alpha spread its wings and jumped into the nest. Each step, it took cracked bone beneath its feet. It wasn't rushing, it was confident. Luma grabbed a fallen metal spear from the ground and held it with both hands. Yalan drew his pulse blade. The Sky Hunter snarled, and the wind around them screamed louder. Suddenly, it charged. Yalan rolled aside. Slashing across its leg, the blade sparked against thick hide but left a glowing wound. The beast roared and swung its claws, nearly hitting him. Luma threw the spear, hitting the creature's side. It didn't pierce, but it made the Sky Hunter pause. Enough time, Yalan ran to the cage, inside. Luma's mother was chained by bone shackles, face pale. Blood on her arms, her eyes fluttered open. "Luma." She whispered. Yolan broke the lock with his blade, catching her as she fell forward. "Your daughter sent me," he said. "We're getting you out." The Sky Hunter roared again, more furious now. It leaped, wings rising, jaws wide. Yalan turned. Luma stepped beside him, then cracked the cliff edge beneath the beast crumbled. All three backed away just in time as the Sky Hunter's weight collapsed part of the nest. It screeched and flapped, struggling to hold on. Yalan threw a piece of sharp bone. It hit the eye. The creature howled and lost its grip, falling down the side of the cliff into the clouds below. Silence. Jalen's chest rose and fell fast. Luma dropped the broken spear and ran to her mother. Hugging her tight, Syra crawled forward and joined them. Her eyes wide. "We're still alive," she whispered. But Yalan knew it wasn't over yet. They still had to climb down, and the clouds below them were still moving. The nest trembled. The fall of the Alpha Sky Hunter had shaken the entire cliffside. Yalan stood over the shattered cage, blade in hand, eyes scanning the clouds. But the silence that followed was heavy, too heavy. Luma helped her mother sit up, gently wiping dirt from her bruised face. "Mom," she whispered, her voice cracking. "You're okay now." "I found you," her mother tried to smile, but her face twisted with pain. "You? You grew brave," she said, her voice dry like the wind. Syra stayed close, eyes wide, staring at the bones. Yalan knew they didn't have time that fall. "Won't kill it," he said, checking his blade's energy. "It'll come back." The nest was bigger than it had looked from afar. There were tunnels built from bones and feathers. Twisting deeper into the cliffside, "I'll search the inner nest," Yolan said. "There may be others still alive." Luma looked up quickly. "You think so?" "There were more cages," he said, "and the Sky Hunters don't kill fast." He handed Luma his backup stun pistol. "Protect them," he said, and vanished into the shadows beyond the main chamber. The air changed as he entered the deeper nest. Warmth and rot mixed together. Each step crunched bones beneath his boots. He passed cages, some broken, others still sealed. Inside, nothing moved, until he heard it. A soft cry. He turned left. Raising his blade's light there, curled in the corner of a bone cage was a boy no older than 10. Eyes dull, skin pale, barely breathing. Yalan smashed the cage with his blade, breaking the lock. The boy whimpered and crawled into his arms. Yalan whispered, "You're safe now." But the noise had drawn attention. Above him, something shifted. A second sky hunter clung to the ceiling, smaller than the alpha, but fast. Its eyes flashed, wings twitching, claws tightening. Yalan dropped low as it lunged from above. He rolled and sliced, but the creature was quicker. It struck his shoulder, sending him crashing into a wall of bones. The boy screamed and ran behind a broken skull. Yalan stood, blood dripping down his arm. The sky hunter circled, hissing. But Yalan wasn't afraid, he was angry. He rushed forward and stabbed into the beast's wing as it slashed again. Sparks flew. The creature shrieked, and Yalan kicked it backward. It slammed into the wall. Bones falling like rain, with no time to waste. He grabbed the boy and ran. The creature chased. Bleeding, but still dangerous. They burst out into the main nest. Luma saw them first, behind you. She screamed. The second sky hunter lunged again, but this time, Asira was ready. She picked up the discarded metal spear and threw it with all her strength. The point hit the creature's side, and it howled in pain. Tumbling back, Yalan turned mid-run and slashed its leg as it tried to recover. The final blow sent it limping over the edge, falling into the stormy clouds below. Silence again, but not safety. Luma's mother looked up at the swirling sky. They'll return soon, she said weakly. They always do. Yalan helped lay her on a blanket, then checked the boy breathing. But unconscious, for survivors now. But the path down would be harder than the one up. The nest crackled under their feet, unstable and burning at the edges from an earlier fire. We need to leave, Yalan said. Now. But how? Luma asked. You saw the cliff, it's too steep. I'll call my ship, Yalan said, pulling a comm unit from his belt. But when he activated it, the screen flashed red. Signal blocked. They're jamming it, he muttered. Who? Syra asked, trembling. The sky hunters, Luma's mother said. They're not just animals. They learn. The wind roared louder, clouds parted above, and two new shadows appeared. Large, circling, coming closer. Jalen's heart sank. They're not giving up. We hide, Luma said quickly, inside the bones. She pulled Yalan toward a large pile of wreckage, an old cargo pod. Half buried under years of debris, they crawled inside, squeezing through broken metal and feather-wrapped bone. The smell was awful, but it was shelter. The wind outside howled like a storm god screaming. Yalan peeked through a crack and saw the two sky hunters land on the nest. They searched, sniffed, hissed, but couldn't see them. Inside the pod, the survivors stayed silent. Even Syra held her breath. Time slowed. Every creak of the nest above them felt like the end. Yalan held the stun pistol tight. They were found. He'd fight to the last. But then a strange noise crackled through the comm device. Faint human voice detected. Tracking signal unlocked. Jalen's eyes lit up. My ship, he whispered. The storm's clearing. It can reach us. He activated the beacon. A flashing light blinked near the pod's edge. And far above, through the clouds, a soft blue light descended his ship's retrieval drone. The sky hunters shrieked at the light and scattered. Flying into the distance, they hated fire, metal, and now light. The pod shook as the drone latched onto it, then slowly began to lift. Luma held her mother tightly. Syra curled up beside the boy. Yalan watched as the nest fell away beneath them. Bones, feathers, screams, all disappearing into the storm. The nightmare was ending, but they weren't safe yet. Not until they were far, far from the mountain. And the nest above the clouds was only a memory. The drone groaned as it pulled the broken pod higher through the sky. Yalan gripped the side rails, watching the nest vanish into the swirling clouds below. Luma sat holding her mother tightly, while Syra kept the rescued boy close. Their faces were tired, their bodies shaking, but they were finally leaving the nightmare behind. The air outside was cold, thin, and filled with the sound of worry engines. Inside the pod, silence hung heavy. No one spoke, but their eyes said everything: fear, pain, hope. Then the drone's voice cracked over the speaker. Warning. Unstable lift detected just in weight distribution. Yalin frowned. That's not good. The pod shuddered, metal creaking below them. The nest flared with red light. Fire had started to spread across the bones. A spark from one of Jalen's earlier torches must have caught. He leaned out and saw flames climbing the twisted structure. The heat rose fast, the smoke chasing them as the drone struggled. But that wasn't the worst part. A screech tore through the air louder than any before. Yalin looked back and saw it, the Alpha Sky Hunter. Wings torn, eye missing, but alive. It had climbed from the cliff, leaped into the storm, and was flying straight toward them. It's coming, he shouted, pulling the stun pistol from his belt. Luma screamed, holding her mom tighter. Syra shielded the others with her body. The drone jerked as the creature slammed into the pod's side. The impact nearly knocked them all off. Metal bent. The drone lights flickered. The Sky Hunter clung to the outside with bleeding claws, trying to tear through the hull. Shoot it, Syra cried. Yalin fired the stun pistol, hitting the creature's face. It shrieked but didn't fall. Instead, it slammed its head into the pod. Again and again, each hit made the metal groan louder. The drone systems began to fail. Damage critical. Prepare for emergency descent. No, not now, Yalin growled. He looked around and saw a flare gun near the back of the pod, left behind by some unlucky traitor long ago. He grabbed it, loaded the single round, and looked the beast in the eye. Hey, he shouted, standing at the edge of the open hatch. The Sky Hunter snapped its head toward him. Yalin fired. The flare exploded into its face, lighting the creature with fire. It howled and released the pod, falling backward into the smoke below. But the damage was done. The drone's grip loosened on it. The pod began to fall. Hold on, Yalin yelled, diving to cover the others. The pod spun as it dropped through the clouds, wind howling in their ears. Luma screamed as her mother slipped, but Yalin caught them both. Syra held on to the boy, her arms wrapped around a metal bar. The world spun faster and faster until crash. The pod slammed into the ground, skidding across rocks and sand, sparks flying. It finally stopped near a cliff base, tilted sideways, metal smoking. Silence returned, but it was the silence of survival, not peace. Yalin groaned as he pushed himself up. His back burned, but nothing felt broken. Everyone okay? He coughed. Luma sat up slowly, her mother still breathing beside her. We're okay, she whispered, voice shaking. Syra nodded. I think so. He's still breathing too, she said, checking the boy. Yalin stepped outside, boots crunching on dirt. The wreckage was steaming, but they were alive. And the mountain, the cursed mountain, was far behind them now, a rising column of black. Smoke marked where the nest had once been. Luma crawled out next, helping her mother sit in the fresh air. Syra followed with the boy, laying him down gently. Yolande turned on his emergency beacon again. Signal locked. Rescue ship inbound D.T. 12 minutes. He let out a long breath. They had made it. Burned, bruised, and broken, but alive. Luma sat beside her mother, brushing her hair gently. You stayed alive for me, she whispered. I'll stay strong. For you, her mother smiled weakly, eyes full of pride. Syra looked out at the desert horizon. No more cages, she said. No more bones. Yolan stood watch as the wind passed softly through the rocks. He kept his weapon ready, just in case, but nothing came. No screeches, no shadows, just silence when the human rescue ship landed, its lights flashing through the dust. Luma turned to Yalin and asked, Will you leave us now? He paused, then shook his head. No, he said gently. Not until I know you're safe, every one of you. And as the rescue team ran toward them, wrapping blankets around the survivors, Yalan stood tall, not as a hero, but as the man who faced monsters for a promise he made to a silver-eyed girl. The rescue ship rose from the dusty ground. Its engines hummed like a quiet promise of safety. Inside the medbay, Luma sat beside her mother. Holding her hand tightly, Syra and the rescued boy lay in fresh blankets. Warm and clean, Yolan stood near the observation window, staring out as the cursed mountain faded behind them. It was over, but it didn't feel real yet. A medic checked on Luma's mother, speaking softly. "She'll live." The woman said, "A few cracked ribs, some infection, but she's strong." Luma nodded, whispering, "I know." She leaned closer and rested her forehead against. Her mother's tears slipped quietly down her cheeks, not from fear, but from relief. Yalan turned and walked to them. "We're almost to the outpost," he said. "There's food, beds, doctors." Luma looked up at him with tired but grateful eyes. "You came back for us," she said, voice low. "You didn't run. I couldn't," he replied, "not after I saw what they'd done." Syra, sitting nearby, leaned forward. "What happens to the nest now?" Yolan crossed his arms. "Burned to ash. The Alpha. Gone," he said, though his voice held a shadow of doubt. But even if it had survived the fall and fire, it would think twice before returning. The rescue ship arrived at the outpost shortly after, a clean facility built into the side of a canyon, human tech, but open to all species. As they landed, workers ran up with stretchers and gear, ready to help. Luma's mother was taken gently to the medbay, while the boy was rushed for surgery. Yolan stayed close, not leaving there. Sighed even once. Later that evening, Luma found him sitting outside on a metal bench. She walked over and climbed up beside him. Stars glittered overhead. No clouds, no screeches, no fear. "I never thought we'd be safe again," she whispered. Yalan looked at her and smiled gently. "You're safe now," he said. "You did. The hard part you survived." She was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Do you have a home?" The question caught him off guard. He shrugged slowly. "A ship, some credits, no family." Luma looked down at her hands. "You could stay with us," he chuckled. "You barely know me, but I trust you," she said. "And my mom does, too." He didn't reply right away, but the idea settled deep in his chest. A warmth he hadn't felt in years. Inside, Syra sat at a table eating warm soup. She waved when she saw Yalan and Luma walk in together. "The boy's name is Kai," she said. "He's still sleeping. But the doctors say he'll make it." Luma smiled. "Then we saved four. Yalan repeated softly. From a mountain full of death, as the days passed, things slowly returned to normal. Luma's mother recovered. Syra stayed at the outpost to help care for Kai. Yolan helped rebuild a small corner of the camp that was abandoned. Kay installed new defenses, lights, alarms, long-range scanners. "No more sky hunters," he said. "Not here." Word spread. Other survivors came quietly. Carefully, some had lost families. Others escaped from other nests far away. But now, they had a place to come to. A place that wasn't full of fear, but of hope. One morning, Luma stood outside the new shelter, brushing her hair. Her silver eyes caught the sunrise. She saw Yolan adjusting solar panels nearby. She ran over, her boots crunching on dry dirt. "Look what I made," she said, handing him a drawing. It was messy, but clear. A man, a little girl, a broken cage, and a fire in the sky. He stared at it, his throat tightening. "You drew this?" She nodded proudly. "It's us." Yalan smiled and folded the paper carefully. "I'll keep it on my ship," he said. "But you're not leaving?" she asked, frowning suddenly. He looked at her, serious. "Not unless you tell me to." "Then you stay," she said, hugging him around the waist. In that moment, Yalin knew he wasn't just a wandering trader anymore. He wasn't just a man with a blade and a ship. He was someone's protector, someone's friend, someone who mattered. That night, under the stars, the new village lit its first lanterns. Not to keep monsters away, but to celebrate. Music played from old speakers, children laughed. And among them sat a silver-eyed girl beside her mother. A boy who had nearly been lost, a quiet girl with a spear, and a human who had dared to climb the nest. The galaxy was still dangerous. But for now, for here, they had peace, because one man had listened when a little voice cried, "Please, human, help. My mom is trapped in the Sky Hunter's nest," and he answered, not with words, but with everything he had.